I want to kind of step back into the bigger picture, and Paul, start with you. Is just that little bit of, I mean, Rogers they've got a lot of first to the market in the industry, which is, I mean, that's takes a company that has a certain tolerance for risk and a certain ability to know that they can communicate with a customer base, because every time you bring something new, half of people go, we don't want the new one. Can you talk a little bit about just quickly some of the first that Rogers has actually brought in?
Yeah, we really, it's a great question. We really pride ourselves on being the leader in innovating in wireless within Canada. Certainly our founder, Ted, he brought wireless to Canada. He built the very first, pre-1G in terms of technical standards to Canada almost 40 years ago. And we have led through all the phases in wireless, 2G, 3G, 4G networks, and now 5G. We were the first to bring 5G to Canada. We now operate the largest 5G network across Canada. And, building these private networks for big mines and industrial, it's just an extension of that, right? We're really good at, that leading edge. And you're right, it is risky. And part of our value is we can take some of that risk out, right? We have the engineering labs. We have the talent all across Canada. And it's not just on the technology, Jared. We have the people that understand the regulatory environment. We have the people that know how to go get access to spectrum. We have the largest spectrum portfolio that we can bring. And, you can't run these wireless networks without access to the airwaves. So it's not just the technology side. Because of our scale, because we're used to being out there first in the market, we have all the other sort of assets that we can bring to take some of that risk out for the customer.
I want to kind of go to the people for a sec, because you are a very large company and organization. Does that sort of reverberate through the company? Is that sort of a culture, especially on that business development side? And both of you are sort of in that vein. So I was curious of sort of that messaging, not so much out-facing, but internally.
Yeah, definitely. We, not only in wireless, I mean, we're also a very large wireline player. We're a media company. We're a sports company. We love to be first in every single one of those categories. My team specifically, that Jeffrey's part of here, we're at the leading edge of that. So we use agile methodologies. The reason we call it business development is because people like Jeffrey actually go out. We speak to our clients years ahead, and we find out what they're looking for. What are the types of features, the capabilities, the problems?
So you're speaking directly you're spending time directly with them.
Then we build a product, right?
Right. Yeah. When we even before we started building our product, we spent about a year, the first year, just talking to our customers. It's a different approach than traditional carriers take, but it was really important for us to get it right. The agile approach that we take, we know we're not going to get it right, but we were able to, adapt to the needs of the market. And it changes so rapidly that we have to have that agility in how we build our product.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about the labs. You quickly mentioned them, but I want to circle back. What does that encompass?
So it's a big investment. So we, at the highest level, we've got significant investments within university research. So here locally, where this show is being broadcast out of Vancouver, we've got an investment at the University of British Columbia. We've got a 5G living lab. In fact, we did work around autonomous haulage for mining right here in British Columbia with some of the leading researchers there. We've got the similar investment in Eastern Canada with University of Waterloo. And then we have our own facilities where we operate things like, they're called Faraday cages, where you can turn radio signals on and not interfere down in the bowels of our building, so to speak. And we have specific labs just for these wireless private networks for industrial automation. And it goes just beyond, making sure the tech works together. We also layer on things that are really important we really talked about, but, security is really important, right? Once you're starting to put all your data on top of that. So all of these things are tested very, very thoroughly across multiple sites. And as Jeffrey mentioned, we look at this, agile as a product development methodology.
Yeah.
We actually reset every 90 days what we're going to go develop and look at. So we might run into something at this show here, Jeffrey and I have a whole nother team you're not meeting here today that actually goes and sort of builds the product and works with some of our great partners. We could hear something interesting here today. In our next 90-day increment, Jeff and I can put that on the dashboard and say, this is something we actually want now, right? It's turned out this is more important for our customers. So that's how fast, when we say that we're adapting and innovating, it's literally every 90 days to make sure that we're hitting what the market is looking for at the right time.
Wow. What, Jeffrey, can we go into a little bit? I know you touched on it already, but I see some things like I got in my notes here. I see these terminologies like self-serve portal and that. Can you talk a little bit about specific services to the mining industry?
Yeah, absolutely. And specific to the self-service portal, as I mentioned earlier, we really went out to industry and understood what they needed. And one of the things that came across, even across multiple verticals, not just mining, the energy sector, retail, logistics, they had, a common theme. They wanted a user experience that allowed them to actually control the elements of the network. So when you think of, a 4G, 5G network, the traditional way of doing it was if you needed any changes to be made, you'd have to call, Rogers, and you didn't have that ability to self-serve, doing things like assigning IP addresses to your devices, static addresses, dynamic, being able to keep that same IP address as your device moved from. We have the ability to move outside of the mine, move outside the mine and actually, go from one mine site to another. So if you have assets that are moving around, you maintain that security, but you also maintain that, common connection to that device. So it's a bilateral connection to every one of your assets. So yeah, it really is built for enterprise. For IT, we use common, terminology in our product as opposed to using very carrier-specific, telecom-specific acronyms and technologies. We actually design it for an enterprise world, which is really the focus and the customers that we're servicing.
You got to remember, Jared, these are clients, particularly in the mining industry, that are really far away in a lot of cases from. It's not unusual to be 8, 9, 10 hours away from the closest urban market. Yeah. They need to be able to self-serve. They need to be able to deal with themselves. And they're used to that with some of those legacy technologies. And they want to make sure that when they transition to modern technologies like 4 and 5G networks, they have the same ability for their staff on site to kind of make some changes. Now, we button down the important things in the background to make sure you don't shut the network down. But we let those customers do those moves, adds, and changes on the fly. They can log in and order more SIM cards that you would need for a mobile network without calling us. So it's the right blend. We're there in the background, making sure that everything stays functional, but they get to integrate it with their operational. So it's really important to have that self-service experience when you're addressing this industry, because we can't always be on site. Right. Right. It's just too far away.
I want to kind of take another step over to some of this first, like this, and here comes the layman question. I always have at least a couple in a show. You've got a 5G system. Then you mentioned when they're laying, or Paul, I think you mentioned it, when they're laying the lines down. No, I'm wrong.
Yeah, the power transmission. They should use.
And they're laying also
all the fiber usually.
Are those two connected? Like bringing in the 5G network? I think Rogers was first for that as well.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. So is that all tied together, or am I two completely different technologies?
No.
Unpack how confused I am.
Sure. Here's where they're related. Is that obviously there's mining operations that are very local, and we can build networks that function on a mine independent of the outside world, which I think is a big part of our value prop,
Absolutely.
Jeffrey.
That'd be the 5G towers.
Those are the things that you can put up as towers or mount them on buildings. But where all of these great technologies that we're seeing at this show, they all need to talk to the outside world. Usually they need to go to one of the big cloud providers. That's where that fiber comes in. You really need that backhaul. They call it. They need that fiber optics to get to the internet, so you can get to these big cloud providers, so you can work on that AI application, do that remote pilot, perhaps. So they're related. They're very complementary, but we can do the networks very standalone, very local. But we're seeing that almost in every instance, the customer actually needs that good large bandwidth pipe that gets to the site in order to take advantage of where they want to be in the future.
Yeah. So the 5G is your basically like wireless cell connectivity, and then the fiber is your
How you get off the site, get
Right,
you the
that's right.
internet, basically.
One thing we didn't mention, we talked about power earlier. One of the big challenges is you don't have power everywhere. There isn't transmission lines everywhere. So we've actually built out the ability to use off-grid power using things like solar and wind to actually power a cell site, which we're actually doing, a 180 kilometer stretch from the town of Cochrane to an actual mine site.
Oh, yeah.
We're actually building, for safety reasons, because you get in your vehicle to go to the mine site, 200 kilometers without any method of communication. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we can tie those two networks, the private and the public network together.
Right.
But yeah, we're pretty excited about the ability, we're even looking into doing things like hydrogen power to power these
Well, I've got
towers.
10 people you should talk to then.